AP Art students. Today is your first real day or the start of your first real week of AP Art. And to kind of kick us off this week, I wanted to go over pretty much the AP Art exam, which is your AP portfolio. Just kind of so you know what you're getting yourself into, and to have you guys starting to think about certain things before you actually begin your portfolio, which will be after fall break. So, I guess to get us started, the first thing I want to talk about is you guys will be turning in your portfolio in May. So this is a year-long course. You are going to be working on your portfolio pretty much from October until then. And you guys will be turning in your portfolio on May 1st of next year. So put that in your calendar, put it in your phone, whatever. Just know that you are going to be turning in your portfolio that day. Now I'm going to be honest, you guys will be turning in your portfolio a week early. Just so you guys know, about over 80,000 students turned in a portfolio last year, which means AP Central, which is where you turn in your portfolio, is crazy busy during that exam due date. So you guys will be turning in your portfolio a whole week early to kind of avoid that. So let's get started. Just so you guys know, there are different portfolios. I guess I should go back to the screen. There are different portfolios you can turn in. So you can turn in a 2D portfolio, a 3D portfolio, or a drawing portfolio. I'm going to talk more about those when we get back from fall break. But just know that those are your options. You're going to choose one to kind of move forward with throughout the school year. I do like to recommend a 2D portfolio if you're wanting to paint and draw and so forth, just because you have a lot more leniency of what mediums you could use, versus if you choose a drawing portfolio, you're kind of limited to like pen and drawing, pencils, and even paintings. They include paintings in the drawing portfolio as well. If you want more information on the portfolios, you can go to the AP Central website, and I also included it in your folder that you should have received on the first day of school. So within there, it goes over kind of a little bit more about each one. Okay, so some terms I want you guys to be familiar with, and terms we'll continue to use throughout the school year, are inquiry, guiding question, sustained investigation, selected works, process, experimentation, revision, and synthesis. So we're about to really just kind of dive into these real quick. So a sustained investigation is a portion of your portfolio. So your portfolio is actually broken down into two parts, and your sustained investigation is pretty much the big guy. He's the one that you will work on all year long, and you've probably heard students complain about the most in the past, just because you are creating a guiding question, and all of your artwork really has to investigate and explore this question that you come up with. So again, you're going to be working on it for a full year, so you got to make it interesting, you got to make it good. 4 years of sustained investigation, that portion of your portfolio is worth 60%, so a big chunk of it. And you will turn in 15 images when you turn in this portion of your portfolio. That does not mean 15 works of art. However, it can if you want it to be. But in my class, you have to have a minimum of 8 works of art. And I'm sure you're like, wow, how do I turn 15 images if I only turn in or have 8 works of art? Wow, words are hard. You will turn in sketches and show proof that you are exploring this topic. So it doesn't have to be completely finished works of art with the 15 images. And when I say 8 works of art, I don't mean 8 works of art total for the entire school year. I say 8 works of art designated to your sustained investigation. Another portion of your portfolio is the selected works portion. And that is where you are pretty much choosing your best of the best artworks that you have that really represent you as an artist. And there's other guidelines as well, just showing that you can have good decision making during this portion of your portfolio. And we'll go over that here in a second. And that is 40% of your portfolio. Still a good portion, just them checking out to see how great of an artist you are. So yeah, that's the selected works portion. And you will turn in 5 images, which actually does mean 5 different artworks. What's great about the portfolio is, since these are in 2 different parts, 2 different scorers, that is not the word I want to use. 2 different people are scoring these. So your person who scores you will never see your sustained investigation if they're scoring your selected works portion. So that means the artworks from your sustained investigation you could include in your selected works if you want to. You don't have to, but you could. So those 8 works of art that you're making for your sustained investigation, 5 of those could be included into your selected works. Hopefully that made sense and I just didn't ramble too much about that. Okay, so a little bit more about your sustained investigation. This is copied straight from the CED, which is the course description. So I'm just going to read it verbatim. And that says, this section of the AP Art and Design portfolio exams offers students the opportunity to make and present works of art and design based on an in-depth investigation of materials, processes, and ideas done over time. Sustained investigation is a work united by a single guiding inquiry. It involves practice, experimentation, and revision using materials, processes, and ideas. We're really going to practice experimentation and revision within your projects this year, mainly your synthesis project. If you checked out your checklist that is in your folder, you'll see your synthesis project is one of the last ones before you start your sustained investigation. But anyway, we're going to really talk about the practice, experimentation, and revision portion of the words are hard, portfolio exam. So just know that that's a big chunk of your portfolio. Again, I hope that made sense because my brain is not working today. Okay, guiding question. The guiding question is formulated by the student to guide the inquiry. It is a method of narrowing the field of investigation. Additionally, the guiding question will allow viewers, specifically AP readers, to better understand how the choices of the art investigation are related. You guys will end up making your guiding question right before fall break. You will turn in a guided question proposal, and I will be reviewing those over fall break. And then when I come back from fall break, I will be kind of meeting with you guys one-on-one, kind of finalizing your guided question to start with. And then you guys will just be hitting the ground running, starting on your sustained investigation after fall break. Just so you guys know, your guiding question will change throughout the year, and that is perfectly fine. Actually, it's honestly expected, just because you guys are exploring and investigating this topic, so your question can change too. And then what is an inquiry? An inquiry is an investigation itself. So for our purposes in AP Art, the artwork you make is the documentation of your personal artistic investigation. That is, you are engaging in an exploration and the artwork is evidence of what you experienced and thought about. Each inquiry is governed by a guiding question. So in other words, a guiding question is a broad, overarching question that drives a sustained investigation, while an inquiry is the process of exploring and developing that question through art making. The selected works portion, this section of the AP Art and Design portfolio exams, offers students the opportunity to make and present works of art and design with minimal constraints. Each work is expected to demonstrate skillful synthesis of materials, processes, and ideas. Students should carefully select works that best demonstrate, oh my goodness, their skillful synthesis of materials, processes, and ideas. The submission can be a group of related works, unrelated works, or a combination of related and unrelated works. These works may also be submitted in the Sustained Investigation section, but they don't have to be. Goodness, guys, I am struggling today with my reading and words of all sorts. But anyway, in other words, for the selected works, you are choosing your best of the best. And I really want to talk about synthesis and what that means. Synthesis is pretty much your decision making. And does your decision making correlate to your overall theme? Like, are you being conscious of, I guess, like your meaning with your artwork and why you chose what you chose, essentially? And what they're saying is, does the material and process and ideas correlate with what you made? And we will talk more about that too. Just because synthesis is a part of the rubric, and I'll point that out when we look at the rubric. So this link leads us to the AP Central website, and you guys have the rubric in the folder that I gave you. It's in the last portion of your folder. And you can see the whole course description, the CED, on AP Central. So if you wanted to read all through here, you can. But they also have the rubrics right here. So starting here, they just go over the different portfolios you could do. So 2D, 3D, and drawing. And the main difference is 3D is a little bit different as far as turning it in, and that is 3D, they have to turn in 10 digital images instead of 5 for the selected works. And that doesn't mean 10 works of art, that just means 10 images for them because they are showing 2 views of each of the 5 works. So it's just showing right here the differences in the turning in process. They're still scored the same, so and still using the same rubrics as well. So the 2D design portfolio rubric is no different than the drawing portfolio rubric. Okay, so let me scroll through here, and here is the rubric. So the Sustained Investigation rubric looks a little bit different than the selected works, and that is it's scored by rows. So row A is really grading the writing prompt and if it correlates with the artwork. So for writing prompt 1, did the student identify the inquiry that guided the sustained investigation? And then in order to score 3, there's written evidence that identifies the inquiry. There's also visual evidence that describes or demonstrates the inquiry. And then the inquiry guides the development of the sustained investigation. So they're looking to see if your artwork progresses throughout, and if it really shows that you're exploring this question that you've created. So that's the first row. Then the second row is about writing prompt 2. And you guys will see what the prompts look like in the example I'll show you here in just a second. But did the student describe ways their sustained investigation developed through practice, experimentation, and revision? So here we are talking about practice, experimentation, and revision again. And this is a big portion. I believe it even says in the CED, I'm probably not going to be able to find it very fast. Let's see if I can. Yeah, it's 30% of being scored or weighted score. So it's a big portion. Let me go back down here. So in order to score a 3, visual evidence of practice, experimentation, and revision, demonstrates a hard word today, demonstrates development of the sustained investigation. So they're looking to see if there's visual evidence and written evidence of how you practiced and experimented and revised your artwork. Then on row C, they're looking for materials, processes, and ideas. Here we are with synthesis again. So again, they're looking for your decision making and making sure that the decisions you make really coincide and help guide this inquiry and help shape your artwork. And we'll go over that with your synthesis project as well. Now, your synthesis project is a little bit more extreme than what they're looking for, but it is good practice for what is meant within the rubric. And then in order to score a 3, the visual relationships among materials, processes, and ideas are evident and demonstrate synthesis. And again, this is a big portion of the rubric, 30%. And then lastly, they're just looking for your skill. So if you have good and advanced skills, you're scoring a 3. I would say most students score 2 or a 3. And then the selected works rubric, which is right here, looks a little bit different. It's pretty straightforward. It's just 1 page and is scored 1 to 5. And again, they're looking for your written evidence, your visual evidence, and then the relationships among those two. And your processes and ideas are evident. And your works are scored holistically all together. And again, we'll go more over this after fall break, but this one's pretty straightforward. So let's actually look at an example of a portfolio to kind of give you an idea of what it looks like. And you guys are able to view the portfolios too. Again, they're on the AP Central website. And I think it goes back all the way to maybe 2019 or 2020. So I'm going to go to the 2024 example. Hopefully they'll have the 25 example in October and we can look at that too. But anyway, I'm going to go to the complete portfolio. But if you wanted to see different sections, like I just showed you how the rubric is in rows, so like row A is scored, row B, and they show you what a portfolio looks like when it's scored at a 1 or a 2 or a 3. So this is a great resource to look at. Okay, so I'm going to go back to that portfolio. This is a 2D portfolio. And here you can see the written evidence. Now these have to be within 600 characters, which is actually pretty hard to do. They don't check for grammatical errors or anything like that. So you could like shorten words, and there's tips and tricks on that, but just know you have to be very clear and concise. So with their guided question, they ask here, how can individual experiences and pressures affect a teenager's subconscious thoughts and actions? So they're very clear with their guided question. They go in and explain their guided question as to like why they chose it, and so forth. And then for the second written response, again 600 characters, they explain how their artwork represents practice, experimentation, and revision. And they just do that here, again, in that short 600 character spot. So here are some examples of the artworks. I feel like this artist did a very great job of exploring their investigation and made it very clear to the reviewer. Now, when I was trained over the summer, my instructor was a AP reader, meaning that she got to score the 2025 exams, and she was pretty much stating how fast they have to score these exams. And she was saying it took her about 10 minutes to score a portfolio, which is really sad because you guys spend a year on it. But what I'm trying to say is, I think it's very important to be very straightforward. Now, if it's not straightforward to the viewer, this is the portion where you could write more. I'm not going to go too in depth here, but this person just put their materials. You could add more and explain more of the process or your meaning behind the work in this portion here. And I'll go more over that later, but being clear is very important. So some examples here. Very beautiful work, by the way. You're going to see how this artist uses her own reference photos, which you guys will as well. You guys will not be using artwork or images from the internet. You will be using your own photos, so sourcing your own reference images. But she does a good job with that, and you can tell that she is sourcing her own images. Now, you guys can look up, for instance, she probably looked up a brain. You can do that. I don't expect you to find your own image of a brain, but as long as you cite it, that works. You can also include photography. And with the new AP portfolio, you actually have to, there's a digital portion of the written response, and that's where this like Adobe Photoshop part would go, and the tools that you use essentially. Oops. Also, there's no limit to your dimensions, so you can go as large or small as you want to go. And another one of their images is a close-up of this one, which is pretty cool. Now, I don't like this portfolio example because for one reason, and that is they don't really show their sketches or their experimentation, but they still scored really well. So there's not really a right or wrong. And you can see where they cited that heart. I love the use of yarn here. And this one has a close-up image. And just the use of mixed media here is beautiful. Love this. So although they have chosen a guided question and there's a theme here, these artworks don't look the same. So I don't want you to get stuck on this thought of, I'm choosing a theme, oh my goodness, it's going to be boring. Look how vastly different these works of art appear, even though they are investigating this one topic. So don't feel like you are confined in any way. And then I think this was one of my favorites, just because it really does represent their investigation, I feel, the most clearly. And the composition, really, just the overlapping. I do not know how to say this word, but it is the style composition of overlapping and pretty much chaotic. And then that's the last of their sustained investigation. And if you guys remember in the rubric, it was like row A, B, C, and D. You can see that they scored 3s on all of those rows. Now you guys will not get the score rationale back. This is where the AP reader is pretty much explaining their rationale for scoring what they scored. Now you guys won't get this back. I won't even get it back. However, I'll be able to tell you what you scored on each section, if that helps you. But sadly, we don't get these back. And then the selected works, which is the 5 images, they just use the same works from the sustained investigation, which they could because 2 completely different AP readers. And they scored well on this too. And they scored a 5. And I guess I should go back and show you. You're explaining like the ideas more here, still explaining the materials and processes. So anyway, this is what our portfolio looks like. Hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of what you're working towards this year. Again, we're going to investigate this way further after fall break. But anyway, that is the AP Art and Design portfolio and the portfolio exam. Anyway, I hope you guys have a fabulous time the rest of this week, especially because you're about to start an exciting project. Anyway, I will talk to you guys later. Bye.